Hey everybody, welcome. Oh, you know what? It's looking pretty gray in here. Let me take off this gray sweatshirt and just get some more color in here. All right, that's a lot better. We're going to be building a pretty simple application, and it's basically going to be a way to launch our favorite websites. And this is going to be built in Python, but it's going to give us a lot of different things. So we're going to get some experience with databases, loops, input and output, a bunch of other things. So pretty good beginner or intermediate exercise. For our database, we're going to be using SQLite, which I think is great because for one, it's included in Python and it's very simple to get started with. However, if you're going to be building large scale applications, it might not be the best database of choice. For that, you might want something else, such as our sponsor of this video. HarperDB. It's a distributed database focused on speed and ease of use. With an intuitive REST API and support for NoSQL and SQL, it's great for many use cases. These use cases include rapid app development, machine learning, edge computing, and real-time analytics. It's a fantastic resource for those learning to code because there's a forever free tier. And it comes with a management studio with code samples and SDKs for languages like Python. You can get started with HarperDB in the cloud with their free forever tier managed service. This is a great tool to get started building any project you need. Check out the link below. So with that, what I want to do first is show you how our app is going to work. And it's a little funky because this might be more fitting for a CLI where you don't have to go through these looped menus. However, this is a good start and we might do a CLI version in the next video. But basically you run your application and it gives you some options. So we can ls to list all of our favorite websites. And we basically have a code name and then where that code name actually goes to. So if you want to visit one of these websites, you just say v and then enter a shortcut such as CB, and that's going to open a browser like this. Another option is to add new shortcuts. So we can say add and then say something like https:// and we can make this short code GOOG. So we want to visit Goog, and that's going to open up Google. Now we can also remove favorites, so we can say RM and then what shortcut do we want to remove. Let's go ahead and remove CB, which is code breakthrough, and then here is our current favorite list. You can hit Q to quit. And then when you relaunch this application, we should be able to see all of our favorites from the previous execution. So it's all stored in an SQLite database. What I meant by a CLI earlier is this might be cool if we could just say something like favorites v goog, and then it would just run like so. But that requires a little bit more setup and is just a bit much to cover in one video. So maybe next time, but this will be a good start. So where do we start? Well, we start with an empty application, and this is just in an empty folder. So this is what our file structure looks like. We're just in this favorites folder with this favorites.py. Now we're going to need a few things. So the very first thing is we're going to want to import SQLite 3. Also, let me know what you think of the theme. I thought I'd try something new here. And we're also going to try import a web browser. So that's what's going to actually allow us to open the default web browser for our computer. Now, when we want to work with SQLite, there's two things we need to do. I also have some videos on SQLite if you want more background, but we're just going to go through this pretty quickly. We're going to create a connection, and to do this, you say SQLite 3.connect, and then you pass in the database name. Now, when you're starting off, you can use a memory database. So you just say memory inside of colons, and this is all going to be inside of a string. So it'll look like this. Now, the other option, if you actually want to create a database file, you do the same thing. However, instead of saying memory, you give it some database name such as faves.db. So what we'll do is we'll start with the memory database, and then we'll come back and switch to an official database. So when we run this, and let's just take a look at our files, we just have favorites.py, and you can't really tell that it's running because it doesn't do anything. However, if I were to switch to this other connection, when I run this faves.db file shows up on the left. If you're ever working with an actual database file and you just need to start fresh, you can just go ahead and delete that file because it's going to be recreated. Obviously, just be careful you don't delete any important data. So we'll comment that out, and we'll start with the memory database. So that's the first thing you need, and then you need what is known as a cursor. So con.cursor, if I can spell there. All right, so that is how we are going to work with the actual database. So to create our initial table structure, we're going to say c.execute, and inside of parentheses is where we put SQL. So it'll look something like this. And this is going to be inside of triple quotes, which just makes it a little bit easier because you can break it up on numerous lines. You don't have to do that. However, if you have some longer statements, it might be a little bit easier. So create table, and we'll call this favorites. And then we can put the columns in parentheses. Now, I wanted to also mention when you switch to an actual database and you're not using a memory database, if you're trying to create a table and that table already exists, it's going to throw an error, and we don't want that. So what you can do is you can add basically a miniature condition here, if not exists, and that'll only create the table if it doesn't already exist. So that'll just allow you to keep this code in there, and then you'll always have that table, but you're not going to be throwing errors. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a title, and the type for this, and this is where I'm going to bring it down to a new line. The type for this is going to be text. And then we're going to have a URL where it actually goes. And this is going to be text as well. So overall, fairly simple. So that should create our table. And now what we can do is we can just test by putting some data into this table. So what we want to do is we want to say c.execute, and we're going to put in another command here. So this one is going to, I'll probably just use single quotes here, insert into favorites, and you can put the columns in parentheses here. So title, URL, values, and we'll just go with, let's actually go back to the triple quotes. That'll just make this a little cleaner. And I'll go ahead and zoom out a little bit too. So that way we can use single quotes in here a lot easier too. So values, we'll just go with my website here. So CB, and then https://codebreakthrough.com. All right, so that should insert an initial row into our table. Now, when you hard code an insert like this and it's just going to exist everywhere, that's known as seeding. So we're seeding this table with one row, and usually it's just done for when you're testing out and you want to just make sure you have some data in there. You can, of course, remove this later on once you build out the functionality to add a row into that table. But for now, since we can't do that, we just want to make sure everything's up and running. So when you do this, there's one extra step you need to do, and that is you need to commit this. And to do that, you do that through the connection object. So con.commit. So that should be everything to actually get a table. However, we still can't see that, so we need to issue a select statement. So here's what that's going to look like. c.execute, and then select star from favorites. And then what we do is we say c.fetch all. So that is how you get all of the results. And then what we can do is we can just assign this to a variable for now. Results is c.fetchAll, and let's go ahead and print the results. So let's run this and let's see what we get. So everything seems to be working. I mean, I did all that without a single mistake, and it's totally not because I have notes right in front of me. I did it all from up here, so just wanted to make that clear. All right, so we have the basic database set up, but we need to build this into some functionality with being able to do this dynamically. We want to be able to type in some stuff and insert it, for example. So what I like to do is I like to build basically the shell of the application and just fill in some to-dos. So we're not going to do everything up front. We're just going to build that initial menu and then go add capabilities. So let's do that by just creating a while loop. And this is just going to be an indefinite loop that's just going to run until we break out of it. And that will allow us just to keep displaying that menu over and over and over again until the person quits the application. So what are we going to do? We'll just do an initial print to basically give them the options. And I forget exactly how we had it, but it's going to look something like this here. So we give them the options V to visit, ls, add, and then rm and q. So you can type it out as is, or you can make it prettier on multiple lines, however you think it looks best. So I'm just going to paste that in here. V to visit a favorite, ls for list, add for new, rm to delete, q to quit. And we don't want that last thing there. All right, so there's this colon here at the end where it takes an input. And the way that works is instead of putting input down here on another line, you can actually just take this string and cut that and paste that in the input and do that instead of printing, and then just assign that to a variable such as response. So just to test this out, we're going to just print the response, and this will just be a loop. All right, so let's go ahead and run this here. V to visit a favorite, ls for list, yeah, so forth. Now I wanted to just call out something here because I'm in Sublime. If you're using Visual Studio Code, most of you watching this probably are. You should be pretty good. You should be in a terminal and you can take input. But with Sublime, it just doesn't work. So you need to run this from the terminal. You can do that with just, a normal terminal like this, just change to the appropriate location, or you can get some kind of extension such as Terminus, which allows us to have a terminal inside of Sublime. So just a little extra note there, just to make sure we're all on the same page here. All right, so once we're here, we're in that folder. We would just say Python 3, or just Py if you're on Windows probably, and then just the name of the application, which is favorites.py. And now when I type something in, hello, it gives us that back as a response right here. So we can tell that loop is working, and now basically we just need to branch on the different input options. So we have V, ls, add, rm, and q. So it's going to be an if-else with 5 different options essentially. All right, so if response is, and I'm not going to worry about uppercase, lowercase, I'm going to say this is case sensitive, so you have to type it exactly as is. If you want to make it insensitive, you could just say if stir.lower of response and then compare it to V. So if it's V, and then here is where I'm just going to fill in like a to-do. I'm just going to say visiting. So far, so good. And if you just want to see how that works with the web browser include up here, let's try it out. We would just say web browser dot open and then pass in a web address. So we'll just say https://. We'll just go with google.com. You don't have to put the www. So let's run this. So if you want to get out of the application that's running, just Control C, that'll close it out. And then we'll run it again, and then we'll just say V to visit, and it opens up Google. So that's pretty cool. So that's how it's going to work, but basically we're going to have to check to see where they want to open first before we just open google.com. Yeah, so that's the first one. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create an elif. So if response is equal to ls, print listing. I'm going to stick with single quotes here. All right, and then we'll have elif response is add. We'll just print adding. elif response is rm. And that'll just be removing. And then one last elif, which is response being q. And we'll print quitting. Actually, we don't need to print anything. We'll just break, and that'll exit the loop, and we'll be at the end, so then it will end. So let's just save that, run it and make sure all of these are working. So we hit V, it says visiting, ls, listing, adding, rm, removing, and then Q, and it exits. It's all working. Awesome. Well, I mean, it's not done, but it's working so far. So now let's just go through each one of these and fill in the necessary steps for it to work. So in order to visit a website, we need to basically take the short code, such as CB or Goog, and find that destination in the database. So let's just create a function to do that for us. So let's go up here, and I'm going to just delete that print for a moment because we're not going to need that. And then we'll just say def get fave, and this is going to take the title, the thing we're searching for. And here's what the code is going to look like. We're going to have c.execute, and we're going to say select everything from favorites. Technically, you would only really need the destination, but you can just get everything and then you have it. Select everything from favorites, where, and here is where you specify some condition. So title being equal to, but we don't just want to put title here. That introduces the risk for SQL injection. So the syntax is a little funky. What you need to do is you need to put a question mark, and then outside of the quotes, what you want to associate with that question mark, which is the title. And this needs to be a tuple, which requires that comma when we only have one element here. So syntax is weird, but it should work. So we'll save that. We also need one other thing, which is to actually fetch the data. So c.fetch1, and then we'll just return that. And that's going to return a tuple of that element. So we can grab individual pieces. So it's going to have the title and the URL. And we can index. So this is going to be index 0. This will be index 1. So what it's going to look like is we can basically ask for, what is the shortcode? Input. What is the shortcut? Yeah, we'll just go with that. What is a shortcut? And we'll just assign that to shortcut. And then we'll just pass a shortcut to our new function, get fave, and then pass in shortcut. And it's going to return that element. So we will just say something like record. And that's what we're going to pass to webbrowser.open. So instead of google.com, we will pass in record index 1. And if you just want to see that, you can print the record, just so if you didn't know exactly what to put there. So we'll save that, and let's just try it out. We'll run it, V to visit, and we'll type CB, which is just based off of that seeded value where we put in the beginning. So hit enter, and it opens the website. Awesome. And you can see this is the structure of the return data. And to grab this element here, we just need to pass in index 1. Here's where I just wanted to briefly talk about some exception handling. What happens if you put something that doesn't exist? It's just going to throw an error. And anytime you want to avoid that, you can put it in a try. So you would say try, and then indent this, except, and here's where you would say something like cannot open. And yeah, that's pretty vague. You can do more on exceptions if you want, but I just wanted to show that here. Next up is listing all of the data, and we already built sort of the functionality to do that right here. So let's just wrap this behavior in a function. So we'll say def get faves and indent all of this. All right, so now we can just invoke this numerous times, which makes our life a lot easier. So we'll just invoke get faves, and we'll just print the response. So get faves. Wonderful. Let's test that one out. ls, and it says none. All right, I figured I'm making a dumb mistake. All right, we're just assigning it to results. We're not returning it, so we can just return. There we go. All right, let's try that again. My bad, but hey, this is real. This is real coding. It's proof that I make mistakes. ls, and there we go. We get a list of our favorites. Now I want to build out the functions for add and remove, and then we'll add those in to our loop. So we have some functionality to add, so we can again convert that to a function. So def add fav, and this will probably take the title or the shortcut, and then maybe the destination. So, or yeah, let's just keep the names consistent here. So title, URL, and we'll indent this here. So instead of hard coding these values here, we're going to replace those with question marks, like so, question mark. And then outside of here, we're going to make that tuple. So inside of parentheses, we'll say title, comma, URL. So let me just space this out. This is what it's going to look like. So that's how to add. Now let's talk about how to remove. And then we'll just test these to make sure they're working. So to remove a favorite, we're going to remove it by the title. And we'll want to make sure we put colons, c.execute. And then we'll say delete from favorites. And that's all you got to do. Just try that on your production database. No, I'm playing. Make sure you remember the where. So where title is equal to question mark, comma, title, comma. Oh, we got to commit too. So con.commit. All right, there we go. Now let's go ahead and test these out. So for this, we will need to get the shortcut and the destination. So shortcut is input. I'm going to put that one second. So I'm going to do the destination first. So destination, and that's going to be input. Where do you want this shortcut to go? And then for this next one, we'll say, what is the shortcut? And then we just invoke add fav and pass in the shortcut and the destination. And I think that should work. And then for remove, we'll do something pretty similar. We'll just take this line here, paste it here, and it was called remove fav, and then pass in the shortcut. So I probably screwed up something. Let's just test it out. Favorites. I'll type add. Where do you want the shortcut to go? https://google.com. What is the shortcut? Goog. Simple mistake here. I don't want to quote the question marks. All right, let's try this again. So we're going to add google.com and Goog. All right, this should be added. And then when we list, you can see that is now in the list. All right, now let's try actually removing that. So we can say rm. What is the shortcut? Goog. And then when we ls, it's no longer there. So let's go ahead and add one more. And this is going to go to https://google.com. And then let's visit it. Well, we give it a shortcut first, Goog. V to visit. And what is the shortcut? Goog. And it opens in the browser. So I think it's all working. It's a lot. Made a few mistakes here and there, but way too much to redo it and make it perfect. So we're going to probably go with this. Now, if you enjoy this content, please be sure to subscribe because we might be going through this code again and making it even better by making a CLI. Also, do not forget to check out our sponsor, HarperDB. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.